Today, all the problems we're doing, we're focusing on slope-intercept form of the equation. We're turning everything into slope-intercept. Does anybody happen to remember what the slope-intercept form of the equation is? Y equals, I think I heard it, mx plus b. Hopefully that sounds really familiar because I know you spent a lot of time in Algebra 1 looking at it. So y equals mx plus b. When you're looking at that equation, the y and the x stand for an ordered pair of coordinates. The m is the slope. The b is the y-intercept, which is why it's called the slope-intercept form of the equation. Now the first four, super crazy easy. The easiest questions you'll get in quite a while. I'm giving you the slope. I'm giving you the y-intercept. So you actually don't have to actually solve anything. You're just writing the equation. So y equals slope, which I said was 3/4, x, put it next to it, plus b, whatever the y-intercept is. Now the y-intercept is a negative, so I want to make sure I put a -5 there. That's it. All you're doing is writing the equation. That's not right. So y equals 3/4 x minus 5. Number 2, same thing. You're just writing the equation. So y equals, my slope is a -3, so I put -3x. My y-intercept is a 5, so I put +5. That's it.
This is what we're doing.
Number 3. Can anybody share what they think number 3 is going to look like? Alexander.
Y equals -1/2 x minus 3.
Good job. Can anybody else share what number 4 is going to look like? Aiden.
Y equals 5x plus 4.
Y equals 5x plus 4. So I took the slope, I took the intercept, and I just plugged in the slope intercept. Now, on Monday, we're going to be doing a few more things slope intercept, but those are going to take a little bit more work, so I'm not just giving you slope intercept, I'm giving you other stuff. But on these 4, you just plug it in. Questions on those 4? Next 4 take a little bit more work, but this still not that much, because we're still doing slope intercept form of the equation. But on these, I'm giving you a graph. So I want to figure out both, then write the equation. So I want to figure out what the slope is. M is slope. I want to figure out what the y-intercept is. Y-intercept is b. Now, the problems I gave you, you're always going to have a point on the y line. There will always be one, because I didn't give you anything that kind of falls halfway in between. Then what you need to make sure and do is look through the line and pick another point that's exactly on the grid. So this is exactly on the grid. You don't want to pick halfway in between, because then you don't really know what that is. So it needs to be on the grid line, needs to be on the grid line. So that way I can figure out the slope. So what's the slope of this guy? Same as we did yesterday. Rise over run. 1, 3. So 1, 3. I rose 1, ran 3. My B is my y-intercept, is where it crosses the y line. And in this case, it's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5. So I'm looking at the graph, figuring out the slope, figuring out the y-intercept. Once I know that, you just write the equation like we did on the first 4. Y equals 1/3 x plus 5. Number 6. Now, like I said, you're always going to be a point on the y-axis. So I can put this point in. Then you're going to look through and see where else you can put a point. Now, there's actually quite a few places on this one you can put a point. Because this is a grid line, this is a grid line, this is a grid line. It doesn't matter which one of these you put it. I'm going to put it here. But you could have put it here, you could have put it here. So what is going to be my slope on number 6? What's my slope on number 6?
Is it negative?
It is going to be negative.
-2.
-2. I'm going downhill this time, so I had to go down 2. Over 1, you can put over 1, but you don't necessarily need it. So my slope is -2. And make sure if it's going downhill, you get the negative there. My B is where it crosses the y-axis. And where did it cross the y-axis? 1. Once you have that, you just write y equals -2. You can put over 1, but you don't need it. X plus 1. Questions on number 6? 7, 8, pretty much the same thing. Give me just a second. We good?
Yeah.
Seven, 8. Again, I know one of the points is going to be here. Because of how I picked the problem is it's always going to be on the y line. Then I'm going to look up through. This is close, but it's not on the grid. Not on the grid. Definitely not on the grid. On the grid. So just be really careful when you're picking where to put your points. It needs to be on the grid. Make sure it's on the grid. Once you have your points on the grid, you can go ahead and figure out what the slope is. So what is the slope of that guy?
3, -3.
-3, 5. -3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. My y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, which is at 5. Make sure you get the negative in there. -5. And then you just write y equals m, -3 fifths, x. It's a -5 this time, so -5. Y equals mx plus b. Number 8, one more on the graph. We have a point here. I've got points all over the place. I mean, basically just diagonally down, they're all points. So I can put a point there. So what's the slope? 1. Don't forget it's a -1. It's down 1 over 1. So it's -1, 1, which is just -1. On the y line, 4. Y equals negative. You don't need the 1, but you can put it. X plus 4. Because don't forget, if there's nothing in front of the x, it's a 1. If there's nothing in front of the x, you can put a 1. So on those 4, I gave you a graph. From the graph, figure out the slope, figure out the intercept, plug it into your slope intercept. Questions on those 4? Next 4. Now the next 4 are all in what's known as standard form. There's 3 different ways that we can write the equation along. We have slope intercept, which is what almost every algebra teacher starts with. Then we have standard form, which they kind of briefly talk about in algebra. We do more of it in algebra or geometry. And there's also point slope, which we'll talk about more next week. So there's really 3 different ways we can write the equation along. All of these 4 are what's known as in standard form. The standard form always has something x, something y equals a number. Notice there's no fractions, and it always starts with a positive number, always. That's what it looks like for standard form. And like I said, we'll talk more about standard form Monday. So on these, I want to write them in slope-intercept. I'm going to go ahead and write slope-intercept form again here, just so I have it handy. So I want them to look like this. Y equals mx plus b. Well, my 5x is on the wrong side, because it needs to be after the equals. So we're going to slide it over. Whoa. 1 second, and it's going to do weird stuff. Let's do that again. So we're going to slide it over. Now remember, when you slide the x behind the equals, it is always going to change the sign. Because the x is always positive, if it's in standard form, it will always be positive. When I slide it, it's going to change to negative. Because I'm changing sides, it changes signs. So I end up getting y equals negative 5x. The 3 is just a plain old 3, so I put plus 3. So y equals negative 5x plus 3. Now that one, that's the only thing I have to do. But most of them, there's going to be one more step. So 10, same thing. I want to move the x to where it belongs. So I'm going to move it to just behind the equals, because I want it to look like this. So I have a 5y equals the 4x is going to become negative 4x. Don't lose that negative. The negative 5 is still there, so I put negative 5. Well, this time I'm not done, because I want the y all by itself. So that means I got to get rid of that 5. And how can I get rid of a 5 in front of a y?
Minus it or add it.
This is 5 times y, because it's right next to each other. Divide. So you're going to divide everything by 5. Make sure everything gets divided. So in front, the 5's cancel, which is the entire reason we did that. So y equals negative 4 over 5x. I still have a negative here. 5 over 5. Most of these will just divide evenly, but if they don't divide evenly, just leave them as a fraction. But in this case, 5 over 5 is 1. So a lot of them will just give you a number there. But if you get something like 2 over 5, just leave it 2 over 5. So 11, same process. Move the x. Now, I had a lot of people the last 2 classes, if there was a negative in front of the y, they lost it. So don't forget that negative. So negative 3y equals, because I moved the 14x, it's going to change to negative 14x minus 21. Divide everything by the negative 3. Negative 3 over negative 3 cancels, which is why we did it. So we get y equals negative over negative cancels. 14 over 3 I'm just stuck with, so just put 14 over 3. Don't lose your x. Negative over negative, again, is going to cancel, so I get a positive. 21 divided by 3, that does divide evenly. So go ahead and divide it and get 7. If it doesn't divide evenly, just leave it as a fraction. One more. Move the 3x. Negative 5y equals negative 3x minus 15. Be really careful you don't lose any of those negatives. I want to move the negative 5. And again, because it's negative 5 times y, you're going to divide everything by negative 5. Everything. Cancels, you get y. Negative over negative cancels, 3 over 5 I'm stuck with. X. Negative over negative cancels, I get plus. 15 over 5, like I said, it divides evenly. So I'm going to go ahead and divide, I get 3. But if it doesn't divide evenly, just leave it as a fraction. So today, everything we focused on was slope-intercept. I gave you slope-intercept, the slope and the slope-intercept. You wrote slope-intercept. I gave you a graph. You wrote slope-intercept. I gave you standard form. You wrote slope-intercept. So every day kind of has a focus. Tomorrow our focus is graphic. Tomorrow's focus is graphic. Now, let me go ahead and stop this video.